"Don't turn me away. I can give you what no other woman will," said the Apache woman in the cold. The wind blew fiercely across the desert that winter. Snow had fallen the night before, leaving the ground white and slippery. The air was so cold that even the birds seemed to hide, and the few trees that managed to grow in this harsh land were bent and twisted by the storms. In the small Apache village tucked between rocky hills, the people were quietly trying to survive. The men hunted when they could, the women tended fires and cooked the little food they had, and the children stayed close to their mothers, trying to keep warm. Among the villagers, there was a woman who was known for her courage and her independence. She had grown up learning how to survive in the wild, and she knew every secret the land held. Despite the hardships she had faced, losing her family at a young age and living through countless winters alone, she never lost her strength or her sense of hope. She carried herself with pride and confidence, and everyone in the village respected her. But even she could not ignore the harshness of the winter, and she worried about what would happen if help did not come soon. On one particularly cold morning, as snowflakes swirled in the wind like tiny pieces of glass, a lone traveler stumbled near the edge of the village. His clothes were torn, and he shivered uncontrollably. He had been walking for hours through the cold, trying to find shelter, but the winter had been cruel and unforgiving. Every step was a struggle, and his body ached from the cold that had seeped into his bones. He felt tired, hungry, and desperate. From the safety of her small shelter, the Apache woman noticed him. She could see his struggle from a distance, and something inside her stirred. She remembered what it was like to be alone and in danger, to feel hopeless in the middle of a storm. She knew that she could help him, and even though the villagers would likely question her choice, she could not leave him to freeze in the snow. She wrapped herself in a thick blanket, gathered a few supplies, and stepped out into the storm. The snow fell heavily, and the wind tried to push her back, but she moved forward with determination. As she approached the traveler, she spoke in a firm yet calm voice, trying to make sure he could hear her over the wind. "Don't turn me away," she said. "I can give you what no other woman will." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that made the traveler stop in his tracks. The traveler looked up at her, unsure what to make of the situation. He was frightened. He did not know whether this woman was kind or dangerous. He hesitated, shivering and trying to catch his breath. The snow had blinded his vision, and he could barely see her face. He wondered if he should run, but his body was too weak to move. He realized that he had no choice but to listen. The woman did not move closer immediately. She waited patiently, giving him time to make his decision. She understood fear, and she knew that trust could not be forced. Instead, she used her own skills to show that she was sincere. She lifted a small bundle of firewood and placed it near him, hoping the warmth would reach him even before they reached shelter. She handed him a small piece of dried food and water, urging him gently to eat. Slowly, the traveler realized that she was not a threat. Her calmness and confidence gave him a small sense of security. As the traveler slowly regained his strength, the woman gestured for him to follow her. She led him carefully through the snow, her footsteps light but steady, leaving faint marks that guided the way. The wind continued to howl around them, and the snowflakes stung their faces, but the woman never wavered. She knew the land well and knew where it was safe to walk. After a few minutes, they reached a small, humble shelter built of stone and wood. Smoke rose from the chimney, promising warmth and safety. Inside the shelter, the traveler could finally feel the heat of a fire on his face. He sank to the ground, exhausted, while the woman moved quickly to stoke the flames. She pulled a blanket over his shoulders and handed him a bowl of warm stew. The aroma alone was enough to make his stomach ache less from hunger. He stared at her, amazed at the sudden change in his situation. He had been on the brink of giving up, and now he was safe. The woman sat opposite him, her eyes sharp and curious. She did not speak much at first, only observing him as he ate. She could see that he had been through a lot, and she wondered what had brought him here. When he had finished, he looked up at her and finally found his voice. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't know how I would have survived without you. The storm is not over, and the world outside is still dangerous. You need to understand that warmth and shelter are not given freely. They are earned by courage and respect." He told her about the journey that had brought him to this cold and lonely place, about his family and his fears, about the mistakes he had made and the lessons he had learned too late. She listened carefully, nodding at times, and at other times remaining silent, letting him speak his heart. In return, she told him about her own life, though only in small pieces at first. She spoke of growing up in the desert, of surviving harsh winters and losing people she loved, of learning the land's secrets to find water, food, and safety. She told him about the importance of courage and self-reliance, but also of trust and kindness. Her stories were not just tales, they were lessons in survival, strength, and humanity. As the evening came, the storm outside grew worse. The wind howled like an angry spirit, and snow piled higher against the walls of the shelter. But inside, the fire burned bright, and the two of them sat in silence, feeling the warmth not just from the flames, but from the trust that was slowly growing between them. For the traveler, this was a new experience. He had met kind strangers before, but never someone who understood fear, danger, and survival so deeply. For the woman, it was also new. She had always helped others in small ways, but this time she felt something stronger, a connection that went beyond mere survival. The villagers watched from their homes, curious and cautious. They had seen the woman step out into the storm, and they had seen the traveler follow her. Some were worried, others were impressed. They knew the woman well enough to trust her judgment, but outsiders always brought uncertainty. Still, the snowstorm raged on, and there was little they could do except hope that both would be safe. As night fell, the traveler finally began to feel a sense of calm. He had been cold, hungry, and alone, and now he was safe, warmed, and fed. He looked at the woman and felt gratitude unlike anything he had known before. He wanted to speak, to thank her again, but words failed him. The woman simply nodded, as if understanding everything he could not say. Outside, the wind continued to roar, but inside the small shelter, a quiet sense of peace settled. The traveler knew that he was not yet out of danger, but for the first time in days, he felt hope. And the woman, despite her own burdens, felt a quiet satisfaction. She had helped someone in need, as she always had, and in doing so, had reminded herself that even in the coldest, harshest conditions, compassion and courage could survive. And so the night passed, with the fire crackling, the snow falling endlessly outside, and two unlikely companions learning that survival was more than just enduring the cold. It was about trust, understanding, and the small acts of kindness that could save a life. The traveler's journey had taken him to the brink, but he had found warmth, shelter, and perhaps something more than he had ever expected in the heart of the Apache woman who refused to turn him away. Morning arrived slowly. The storm had not fully passed, but the worst of it had ended. Outside, the snow covered every tree, rock, and path. The traveler looked out at the frozen landscape and realized just how alone he had been before finding this place. He had feared the storm, the cold, and the dangers hidden beneath the snow. Yet here he was, alive and safe, thanks to the woman who had taken him in when he had nowhere else to go. She noticed him staring at the frozen world and spoke softly. "The storm is only one challenge. The cold, the hunger, and fear are others. If you want to survive, you must understand that life is about facing each danger step by step." Her voice was calm, but it carried a weight of experience. She had survived many winters, many storms, and many moments when hope seemed impossible. The traveler nodded. He had learned a lot just in the past day. He realized that survival was not just about finding shelter or warmth. It was about trust, courage, and the willingness to accept help when it was offered. He had always thought he had to face difficulties alone, but now he understood that connection could be a strength, not a weakness. As the storm eased, the woman helped him prepare for the day. She showed him how to build a small snow shelter outside in case the storm returned, how to collect water from the melting snow, and how to find food hidden under the frozen ground. Every lesson was simple, but every lesson mattered. The traveler listened carefully, eager to learn. He realized that knowledge was as important as warmth in surviving this harsh world. They spent the day working together. She showed him how to track animals in the snow, how to recognize the signs of approaching storms, and how to make firewood last longer in the cold. He watched her closely, noticing her strength, her focus, and her determination. She moved with confidence and purpose, each action deliberate and precise. It was clear that she had lived her entire life in harmony with the land, understanding its dangers and secrets in a way he could barely imagine. As they worked, they shared more stories. The traveler spoke of his family and the people he had met on his journey, of mistakes he had made and lessons he had learned too late. The woman listened, occasionally nodding or asking questions that made him think more deeply. She told him about her own life, about the times she had been alone and afraid, and how she had learned to survive and to help others despite her own struggles. Their conversations were simple but profound, building trust and understanding between them. By evening, the storm had passed completely, and the sky cleared to show a pale winter sun. The snow glistened like crystals, and the air, though still cold, was quieter. They returned to the shelter, their hands and faces frozen from the day's work, but their spirits lifted by the small victories of survival. The traveler realized that he had grown stronger in just one day, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. That night, as they sat near the fire once again, the traveler looked at the woman with a new sense of respect and gratitude. "I have learned more in one day with you than I ever have on my own," he said. "You have shown me courage, kindness, and strength. I will never forget this." In the following days, the traveler continued to work alongside her, learning more about survival, the land, and the ways of the Apache people. He began to understand the balance between independence and trust, between courage and caution. He learned to respect the environment, to read the signs of nature, and to prepare for challenges before they became dangerous. The woman's lessons were not only about survival, they were about life itself. The villagers watched this transformation with interest. At first, they had been cautious, unsure if the traveler could be trusted or if he would bring trouble. But as they saw him learning, helping, and respecting the woman and the land, their skepticism faded. Some of the villagers even offered assistance, bringing extra food or firewood, and soon the shelter became a place where knowledge, kindness, and trust were shared. One evening, as the traveler and the woman prepared their fire, a particularly strong wind blew outside. The door rattled and snow piled against the walls. The traveler froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. The woman placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Do not panic," she said. "We have faced worse storms. We can handle this together." Her calmness reassured him, and together they secured the shelter and tended to the fire. It was a small test, but it reminded both of them that survival was always an ongoing effort, not a single moment. Days turned into weeks. The traveler grew stronger and more skilled, no longer fully dependent on the woman but still guided by her wisdom. They worked together, laughed together, and shared stories late into the night. He came to see her not just as a helper but as a teacher and a friend. She, in turn, saw in him someone willing to learn, to respect, and to grow. Finally, the snow began to melt, and the landscape slowly revealed its hidden colors. The harsh winter was ending, and the traveler knew that he would soon have to continue his journey. Though he was grateful for everything he had learned and experienced, he felt a pang of sadness at leaving the woman who had saved him. On the morning of his departure, the village gathered to say goodbye. The traveler packed his belongings, now stronger and more prepared for the journey ahead. He looked at the woman, wanting to express his gratitude but finding words difficult. She simply nodded, a smile touching her lips. "Go with strength and courage," she said. "Remember what you have learned here. The world will test you, but you are ready." As he disappeared into the distance, the woman watched from her shelter. She felt a quiet sense of pride. She had helped someone in need, shared her knowledge, and shown kindness. She had reminded herself that even in the coldest, harshest conditions, courage, trust, and compassion could survive. The village returned to its daily life, but everyone knew that this story would be remembered. The story of the woman who refused to turn a stranger away, the traveler who learned the value of trust and strength, and the bond that formed in the heart of a harsh winter. Life continued, as it always did. The woman carried on with her daily work, but she did so with renewed hope, knowing that her courage and kindness had made a difference. The traveler, far away now, would carry the lessons he had learned with him, never forgetting the small shelter in the snow, the fire that warmed him, and the Apache woman who had saved not just his life, but had taught him the true meaning of strength. And so the story ends with a quiet reminder. Survival is about more than enduring the cold. It is about trust, connection, courage, and the willingness to open your heart to others, even in the harshest of times. The snow may fall, the wind may roar, and life may challenge us in ways we cannot imagine. But kindness, wisdom, and resilience can light the way, keeping hope alive even in the coldest night.